In a peaceful suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets were filled with the laughter of children and the smell of freshly cut grass, lived two curious and energetic 8-year-old twins, Marcus and Maya Johnson. The twins were inseparable, always coming up with new ideas to keep themselves entertained. Whether it was building blanket forts in the living room or racing their bikes down the sidewalk, they'd brought life and joy to everyone around them. Their mother, Elena, often joked that raising the twins was like managing a pair of little tornadoes, always spinning, always moving, and leaving a trail of creativity behind them. But she loved every moment of it. Their father, Derek Johnson, wasn't home as often because of his demanding job in Washington, D.C., but he made sure to call every night to check on his family. Though the kids didn't fully grasp the importance of his role as the U.S. Attorney General, they knew he worked hard to help people and make the world a better place. On this particular sunny afternoon, the twins had decided to set up a lemonade stand outside their house. It wasn't just any lemonade stand, it was their masterpiece. They decorated it with colorful markers, spelling out "Best Lemonade Ever." In bold letters, a small chalkboard sign listed prices: $1 for a cup, or $2 if you wanted extra sugar. They even added paper umbrellas to each cup to make it feel fancy. "Mom says we can keep the money if we sell enough," Marcus said proudly, arranging the cups neatly on the table. "And if we don't sell enough, we'll still have fun trying," Maya chimed in, pouring fresh lemonade into a pitcher. Neighbors passing by couldn't help but smile at the sight of the enthusiastic duo. Some stopped to buy a cup, complimenting the twins on their entrepreneurial spirit. Others simply waved and promised to come back later. For Marcus and Maya, this was more than just a way to earn some pocket money. It was an adventure. They imagined themselves as business tycoons, taking over the world one glass of lemonade at a time. But despite their excitement, neither of them noticed that their stand was slightly blocking part of the sidewalk. In a neighborhood where rules about sidewalks and driveways were taken seriously, this small oversight would soon attract unwanted attention. As the twins laughed and chatted with customers, a police car slowly rolled down the street. Officer Grayson, a stern-looking man with years of experience under his belt, pulled over when he spotted the obstruction. Little did the twins know, their day was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would leave the entire community talking for weeks to come. The air buzzed with innocence and possibility, but beneath the surface, tension simmered, waiting to boil over. What started as a simple act of childhood imagination was about to become something far bigger and far more complicated than anyone could have predicted. Officer Grayson stepped out of his patrol car, his boots clicking against the pavement as he approached the lively scene. The twins' lemonade stand was buzzing with activity, drawing smiles from neighbors and curious glances from passersby. At first glance, it seemed like a harmless setup, a couple of kids enjoying a summer afternoon. But Officer Grayson's eyes narrowed when he noticed the stand spilling slightly onto the sidewalk. To him, it wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a potential hazard. "Excuse me," he said in a firm tone, stepping closer to the table. Marcus and Maya turned to look at him, their cheerful expressions fading into confusion. "Yes, sir," Maya asked politely, clutching her pitcher of lemonade tightly. "You're blocking the sidewalk," Officer Grayson replied, pointing to the edge of the stand. "This is public property. You can't just set up here without permission." The twins exchanged puzzled glances. They had seen other kids in the neighborhood do similar things, selling cookies, hosting garage sales, and no one had ever complained before. "But we're not hurting anyone," Marcus said, trying to sound confident despite the knot forming in his stomach. "People are buying lemonade and walking around fine." Officer Grayson frowned at the boy's response. He didn't appreciate being questioned, especially by someone so young. "That's not the point," he snapped. "Rules are rules. Now, I need you to move this stand right now." Maya hesitated, unsure of what to do next. She glanced at Marcus, who seemed determined not to back down. "We're not doing anything wrong," Marcus argued, crossing his arms. "If you want us to stop, you'll have to give us a court order or something." His words were meant to sound clever, but they only made the situation worse. Officer Grayson's face hardened, and his patience began to wear thin. To him, Marcus's comment felt like mockery, even though the boy had no idea how serious things could get. "I don't need a court order to enforce the law," the officer shot back, his voice rising. "Now, either you two clear this up, or I'll have to take further action." The crowd of neighbors that had gathered started murmuring among themselves. Some felt sympathy for the twins, while others wondered if the officer was overreacting. But none of them dared to intervene. Marcus and Maya stood frozen, unsure of what further action meant. Their hearts raced as they realized the man in uniform wasn't going to let this go. "Can we at least call our dad?" Maya finally asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "He'll know what to do." Officer Grayson raised an eyebrow. "Your dad? Who's your dad?" "He's important," Marcus said defiantly, though his voice wavered. "Just let us call him." For a moment, the officer hesitated. Something about the twins' insistence gave him pause, but pride and frustration quickly took over. Shaking his head, he reached for his handcuffs. "You've got one chance to cooperate," he warned. "Otherwise, we're doing this my way." What happened next would leave the entire neighborhood stunned, and the twins' father ready to step in and change everything. The tension between Officer Grayson and the twins was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus stood tall, trying to mask his fear with determination, while Maya clutched her phone tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. The crowd of neighbors continued to grow, whispering nervously among themselves as they watched the standoff unfold. Officer Grayson's patience had reached its breaking point. He didn't care who their father was or how important he might be. All he saw were two children refusing to follow orders, and in his mind, that meant one thing: discipline. With a deep sigh, he pulled out a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "All right, kids," he said sternly, stepping closer. "If you won't cooperate, then we're going to do this the hard way." Maya gasped, clutching her brother's arm. "You can't arrest us. We didn't do anything wrong." Marcus tried to stay brave, but his voice cracked as he spoke. "We're just selling lemonade. Why are you doing this?" Ignoring their protests, Officer Grayson knelt down and gently, but firmly, placed the handcuffs on the twins' wrists. He wasn't rough, but the sight of two small children in handcuffs sent shockwaves through the crowd. Neighbors exchanged horrified looks, some covering their mouths in disbelief. "This is ridiculous," shouted an older woman standing nearby. "They're just kids. What are you trying to prove?" But Officer Grayson ignored her, focusing instead on finishing what he'd started. Once the twins were secured, he stood up and looked at them. "Now, if you want to call your dad, go ahead. But I'm taking you both downtown until we figure this out." Maya sniffled, holding back sobs as she dialed her father's number. Her hands trembled so much that she almost dropped the phone twice before finally getting through. On the third ring, Derek Johnson answered. "Hey, sweetheart," he said warmly, unaware of the chaos unfolding miles away. "What's going on?" Maya burst into tears, unable to form words. It was Marcus who spoke up, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "Dad, there's a cop here, and he put handcuffs on us, just because of our lemonade stand." For a moment, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Derek's tone shifted, becoming sharp and urgent. "What? Where are you now? Who's the officer?" Before Marcus could answer, Officer Grayson leaned in, recognizing the name Derek Johnson. His eyes widened slightly as realization dawned on him. Could these kids really be related to the U.S. Attorney General? "Sir," the officer interjected, clearing his throat. "I'm handling a situation here. These children were obstructing public property and refused to comply with my instructions." Derek's response came quickly, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Officer, whatever you think is happening here, it stops now. Do not take another step until I arrive." understand. Grayson swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like the ground beneath him was shifting. This wasn't just any parent. It was someone with immense power and influence. And judging by the tone in Derek's voice, things were about to escalate far beyond a simple misunderstanding. As the call ended, Maya wiped her eyes, looking up at her brother. "Do you think Dad will fix this?" Marcus nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his expression. "He has to, right?" Meanwhile, Officer Grayson stared at the twins, his earlier confidence crumbling. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Had he made a mistake? And if so, how big would the consequences be? The moment Derek Johnson hung up the phone, his calm demeanor transformed into a storm of controlled fury. He had always been a man of action, someone who didn't waste time when it came to protecting his family or addressing injustice. But this was personal. His children, his bright and innocent twins, were in handcuffs over a lemonade stand. The absurdity of the situation hit him like a freight train, but there was no room for disbelief, only resolve. Within minutes, Derek sprang into motion. First, he called his assistant, Sarah, issuing rapid instructions. "Get me everything on Officer Grayson," he said sharply, "and alert the local precinct. I'm heading there now." Then, knowing how quickly news could spread, he contacted a trusted journalist friend, planting the seeds for coverage that would ensure transparency. If this was mishandled, the public needed to know. As Derek drove toward the scene, his mind raced with questions. How could an officer mistake a child's playful defiance for criminal behavior? Why hadn't common sense prevailed? And most importantly, what message did this send about fairness and accountability in law enforcement? These weren't just thoughts about Marcus and Maya. They were reflections on a system he'd dedicated his life to improving. When Derek arrived at the neighborhood, the sight before him confirmed his worst fears. There, under the afternoon sun, stood his children, his babies, in handcuffs, surrounded by curious neighbors, and a visibly uneasy Officer Grayson. Cameras flashed as reporters began arriving, tipped off by Derek's team. The once quiet street now resembled a media circus, but none of that mattered to Derek. His eyes locked onto Marcus and Maya, who looked both relieved and terrified to see him. "Dad!" Maya cried out, her voice cracking as she tried to run toward him. Officer Grayson hesitated for a split second before removing the handcuffs, realizing the gravity of the situation. Derek knelt down, pulling his children into a tight embrace. For a moment, he let himself be a father, not the attorney general, not a public figure, just a dad comforting his kids. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice steady despite the fire burning inside him. "I've got you." Standing up, Derek turned his attention to Officer Grayson. His expression was unreadable, a mask of professionalism that hid the storm brewing beneath. "Officer," he began, his tone icy yet composed, "explain to me why my children are in handcuffs." Grayson swallowed hard, sweat forming on his brow. "Sir, I was enforcing the law. They were obstructing public property and refused to comply with my orders." Derek raised an eyebrow, his gaze piercing. "Refused to comply? With what exactly?" "Arresting them for selling lemonade." The crowd murmured in agreement, their collective disapproval growing louder. Neighbors exchanged glances, some nodding in support of Derek's words. One elderly woman stepped forward, pointing a finger at Grayson. "These are good kids. They didn't deserve this kind of treatment." Ignoring the crowd, Derek continued, his voice rising slightly. "You escalated a minor issue into something far more serious. Did you even consider the age of these children, or the fact that they posed no threat whatsoever?" Grayson stammered, clearly unprepared for the intensity of the confrontation. I followed protocol, sir. That's all I can say." Derek shook his head, disappointment etched across his face. "Protocol doesn't mean much if it's applied without judgment or humanity. You'll answer for this, not just to me, but to everyone watching." With that, Derek turned back to Marcus and Maya, placing a reassuring hand on each of their shoulders. "Let's go home," he said softly. "We'll sort this out later." As they walked away, leaving Officer Grayson standing awkwardly amidst the chaos, Derek couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief that his children were safe, anger at the injustice they'd faced, and determination, a fierce commitment to ensuring this never happened to another family again. The next morning, the story of Marcus and Maya's arrest exploded across headlines nationwide. Photos of the twins in handcuffs, though blurred to protect their identities, circulated on every major news network. Social media buzzed with outrage as people shared posts questioning how two children could be treated so harshly over something as innocent as a lemonade stand. The phrase "justice for Marcus and Maya" began trending online, drawing attention not only to their case, but also to broader issues of policing and fairness. Officer Grayson found himself at the center of the storm. His name and photo appeared alongside articles detailing the incident, painting him as either incompetent or overly aggressive, depending on who was telling the story. At the precinct, tempers flared among his colleagues. Some defended him, arguing that he had simply been doing his job, while others criticized his lack of discretion when dealing with children. By lunchtime, Internal Affairs had launched an investigation into the matter, leaving Grayson suspended pending review. Meanwhile, Derek Johnson held a press conference outside his home, standing alongside Elena, Marcus, and Maya. Cameras flashed as reporters jockeyed for position, eager to capture every word from the U.S. Attorney General. Dressed in a sharp suit, Derek exuded authority, yet his tone remained measured and calm, a stark contrast to the firestorm swirling around them. "This isn't about my family," Derek began, his voice steady but firm. "It's about accountability. What happened yesterday should never have occurred. Two children were treated like criminals because of a misunderstanding, one that could have been resolved with patience and understanding instead of force." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "This isn't just about Officer Grayson. It's about a system that allows such incidents to happen. We need better training for our officers, particularly when interacting with young people and marginalized communities. We need policies that prioritize de-escalation over punishment. And we need transparency, so trust can be rebuilt between law enforcement and those they serve." As Derek spoke, Marcus and Maya stood quietly beside him, holding hands. Their faces were somber, still processing the weight of what had happened. When a reporter asked if they were scared during the ordeal, Maya hesitated before speaking up softly. "We didn't understand why he was so mad at us. All we wanted to do was sell lemonade." Her innocence struck a chord with everyone listening. Even hardened journalists lowered their notepads momentarily, moved by her honesty. Derek placed a protective hand on her shoulder, signaling it was okay to stop talking if she felt overwhelmed. Later that day, Derek met privately with the police chief and city officials to discuss immediate changes. He pushed hard for mandatory sensitivity training programs focused on youth interactions and proposed creating a community advisory board to oversee police conduct. Though some resisted his ideas, citing budget constraints or logistical challenges, Derek refused to back down. "If you won't act," he warned, "then I'll take this issue straight to Congress." By evening, news outlets reported that Officer Grayson had issued a public apology through a brief statement released by the department. While some dismissed it as too little, too late, others saw it as a step toward healing. For Grayson, however, the damage was done. His reputation hung precariously in the balance, and whispers of early retirement began circulating within the precinct. Back at home, the Johnson family gathered in the living room. Despite the whirlwind of events, there was a sense of quiet determination among them. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they had sparked a conversation that couldn't be ignored. As Marcus flipped through channels showing coverage of their story, he turned to his dad with wide eyes. "Do you think this will make things better?" Derek smiled faintly, ruffling his son's hair. "I hope so," he said. "But change takes time. For now, let's focus on making sure no other kid has to go through what you two did." And with that, The Johnsons prepared to face whatever came next, together. In the days following the incident, Officer Grayson became a household name, but not in the way he had ever imagined. The weight of public scrutiny pressed down on him like a storm cloud that refused to lift. He spent sleepless nights replaying the events over and over in his mind, questioning every decision he'd made. Had he been too quick to act? Too rigid in enforcing the rules? Or was this just another example of society turning against law enforcement? At the disciplinary hearing held by the police department, Grayson sat stiffly in a small conference room, surrounded by stern-faced officials. Derek Johnson attended as well, sitting quietly but radiating an air of authority that filled the space. When asked to explain his actions, Grayson spoke haltingly, his usual confidence replaced by unease. "I thought I was doing my job," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean for things to escalate the way they did. It's hard to know what to do sometimes, especially when people don't listen." Derek leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "That's exactly why we need better training," he interjected calmly. "Law enforcement isn't just about enforcing rules. It's about understanding people. Children aren't adults. They don't process situations the same way, and they certainly shouldn't be treated as criminals for something as simple as running a lemonade stand." The panel nodded, taking notes as Derek continued. "This isn't about punishing one officer. It's about preventing future mistakes. Accountability is important, but so is education. We owe it to our communities, and to officers like you, to provide tools that help everyone succeed." By the end of the hearing, it was decided that Grayson would receive a suspension without pay and be required to complete extensive sensitivity and de-escalation training. While some felt the punishment was too lenient, others saw it as a second chance, a chance for Grayson to learn from his errors and grow into a more compassionate officer. Outside the precinct, Derek addressed reporters once again, using the opportunity to highlight systemic issues within policing. "What happened to Marcus and Maya wasn't an isolated incident," he said firmly. "It's a symptom of larger problems that need addressing. That's why I'm calling for nationwide reforms to ensure incidents like this never happen again." His words resonated with many, sparking conversations across the country. Parents shared stories of their own encounters with law enforcement, while activists rallied behind Derek's push for change. In schools, teachers used the story as a lesson in empathy and fairness, encouraging students to think critically about how rules are applied. Back home, Marcus and Maya slowly began to heal. The emotional toll of the arrest lingered, manifesting in quiet moments when they seemed lost in thought or hesitant to leave the house. Elena noticed these changes and suggested they attend counseling sessions together as a family. Derek agreed, recognizing the importance of processing their experience in a healthy way. To further support healing, Derek organized a community meeting at the local library. Dozens of residents showed up, eager to discuss ways to improve relations between the neighborhood and law enforcement. During the meeting, Derek listened intently as neighbors voiced concerns about racial profiling, about feeling unheard, about wanting safer interactions for their children. Inspired by these discussions, the Johnson family launched a fund called Youth and Justice, aimed at supporting programs that fostered trust between young people and police officers. Through workshops, mentorship initiatives, and recreational activities, the program sought to bridge gaps and build mutual respect. As weeks passed, the twins found solace in helping their parents with the new project. Setting up lemonade stands turned into organizing fundraisers, where kids from all over the neighborhood joined forces to contribute. For Marcus and Maya, it was a way to reclaim their sense of purpose, and to remind themselves that even in the face of adversity, there was always room for hope and action. Though scars remained, the family emerged stronger, united not only by love, but also by a shared mission to create lasting change. And though the road ahead was long, they faced it with courage, knowing they had already started something remarkable. The community meeting at the library turned out to be more than anyone expected. What started as a small gathering quickly grew into a powerful movement, fueled by shared stories and collective determination. Neighbors poured in, parents clutching their children's hands, teenagers scrolling through their phones for news clips, even elderly residents who rarely ventured out of their homes. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of frustration, hope, and resolve. Derek opened the meeting with a heartfelt speech. "This isn't just about my kids," he said, his voice steady but warm. "It's about all of us. Every child deserves to feel safe in their own neighborhood. Every family deserves to trust the people sworn to protect them. But trust isn't given, it's earned. And we're here tonight to figure out how to earn it back." One by one, residents stood up to share their experiences. A young mother recounted how her son had been questioned by police simply for playing basketball after dark. An older man talked about being pulled over repeatedly for no reason other than driving through certain neighborhoods. Each story added another layer to the conversation, painting a picture of systemic issues that couldn't be ignored. Marcus and Maya sat quietly beside their parents, listening intently. Though they were still processing their own emotions, hearing others speak made them realize they weren't alone. Their ordeal had struck a chord with so many people who felt unseen or misunderstood. For the first time since the arrest, the twins began to see their experience not just as something painful, but as a catalyst for change. As the discussion unfolded, ideas began flowing freely. Someone suggested hosting monthly Coffee with Cops events where residents could meet officers in a casual setting. Another proposed creating a youth advisory board to give kids a voice in shaping local policies. Derek jotted down every suggestion, nodding approvingly as the crowd buzzed with excitement. Elena stepped forward, addressing the group with quiet strength. "We need to focus on healing, not just for our children, but for everyone affected by these kinds of incidents," she said. "That's why we're starting the Youth and Justice Fund. It's not just about raising money. It's about building connections and showing our kids that they have power to make things better." The applause that followed was thunderous. People immediately volunteered to help organize fundraisers, mentorship programs, and workshops. By the end of the night, the library felt less like a venue and more like a hub of possibility, a place where dreams of a brighter future took root. Over the next few weeks, the Johnsons threw themselves into the project. Marcus and Maya became unofficial spokespeople for the cause, appearing alongside their dad at press conferences and community events. They spoke candidly about their fears during the arrest and their hopes for a world where no child would feel afraid of law enforcement. Their honesty resonated deeply, especially with other young people who saw them as relatable role models. Meanwhile, Officer Grayson completed his sensitivity training, emerging with a newfound perspective. He reached out to Derek, asking if he could volunteer with the Youth and Justice Fund as part of his rehabilitation process. Though skeptical at first, Derek agreed, seeing an opportunity for redemption and education for both sides. At the first fundraiser, held in the park near the twins' house, Officer Grayson showed up wearing plain clothes, looking nervous but determined. Marcus spotted him from across the field and nudged Maya. "Should we talk to him?" he whispered. Maya hesitated, then nodded. Together, they approached the former officer, who greeted them awkwardly but sincerely. "I wanted to say I'm sorry again," Grayson said, his voice trembling slightly. "And thank you for letting me try to make this right." For a moment, there was silence. Then Marcus extended his hand. "Okay," he said simply. Maya followed suit, offering a shy smile. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. By the end of the day, the event had raised thousands of dollars and brought together dozens of families. Kids ran around laughing, while adults chatted openly with officers who attended in uniform. The atmosphere was one of cautious optimism, proof that bridges could be built, even after they'd been burned. As the sun set over the park, Derek stood watching the scene unfold, his arm draped around Elena's shoulders. Marcus and Maya played nearby, their laughter echoing in the cool evening air. Though the scars of the past remained, they were fading, replaced by something stronger: hope, resilience, and the belief that even the smallest voices could spark monumental change. Months passed, and the ripple effects of Marcus and Maya's story continued to spread far beyond their quiet suburban neighborhood. What had started as a simple lemonade stand had grown into a nationwide conversation about fairness, empathy, and reform in law enforcement. The Youth and Justice Fund flourished, inspiring similar initiatives in cities across the country. Parents, teachers, and community leaders rallied around the idea that trust could be rebuilt, one interaction at a time. For Officer Grayson, the journey toward redemption was neither quick nor easy. After completing his training, he began volunteering regularly with the fund, working alongside kids like Marcus and Maya to rebuild fractured relationships. At first, some residents were hesitant to accept him, whispering behind his back or avoiding eye contact. But slowly, through consistent effort and genuine remorse, he earned their respect. One day, during a basketball game organized by the program, Marcus passed him the ball mid-play, earning a surprised grin from the officer. It was a small gesture, but it symbolized progress, proof that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal. Back at home, life for the Johnson family settled into a new rhythm. Marcus and Maya returned to being the lively, imaginative twins everyone knew and loved. They still set up their lemonade stand occasionally, though now it served as a reminder of how far they'd come. Each cup sold felt like a victory, not just for them, but for every child who deserved to grow up feeling safe and valued. Derek, too, carried the lessons of this experience into his work as U.S. Attorney General. He introduced sweeping reforms aimed at improving police-community relations, including mandatory de-escalation training and stricter accountability measures. His efforts sparked debates in Congress, drawing both praise and criticism. But Derek remained steadfast, knowing that change often came with resistance. "If we wait for perfect conditions," he told colleagues during one heated session, "we'll never move forward." Alina played an equally vital role, ensuring her family stayed grounded amidst the whirlwind of attention. She encouraged open conversations at the dinner table, teaching Marcus and Mia to process their emotions while celebrating their resilience. "You two are stronger than you realize," she often said, pride shining in her eyes. "Don't ever forget that." As the months turned into a year, the twins' story became a beacon of hope for communities grappling with similar issues. Schools adopted anti-bias curriculums inspired by the Youth and Justice Fund, and local governments implemented policies promoting transparency in policing. Even Officer Grayson found himself invited to speak at conferences, sharing his transformation as a testament to the power of accountability and growth. On the anniversary of the incident, the Johnsons hosted a celebration in the park where the first fundraiser had taken place. Hundreds of people attended, spilling onto the grass with laughter, music, and food trucks lining the streets. Marcus and Maya stood on a small stage, holding microphones as they addressed the crowd. "We didn't know what would happen when we set up our lemonade stand last summer," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the sea of faces before him. "But because of what happened, we learned something important. Even when things seem unfair, there's always a way to make them better." Maya nodded, taking over. "We're just kids, but we saw how much can change when people come together. So thank you for listening, for helping, and for believing in us." The applause that followed was deafening, echoing through the park like a promise. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Derek watched his children with tears in his eyes. This wasn't the future he'd envisioned for them, but it was one filled with purpose, courage, and love. In the end, Marcus and Maya's story proved that even the smallest moments could spark monumental change. Their lemonade stand hadn't just quenched thirst, it had ignited a movement. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, the Johnson family, and the community they inspired, faced it with unwavering determination. Together, they showed the world that justice wasn't just a word. It was a choice, one made every day, by every person willing to stand up and demand something better.